Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Mindset Unlimited. Today, we are talking about what's really draining your energy, an inside look into the ELI debrief. ELI stands for Energy Leadership Index, and the debrief is what you get after you take the assessment. We do the debrief because it's really necessary to be able to understand the assessment. Since this is an attitudinal assessment rather than a personality assessment, part of what we're doing is looking at the lens that you perceive the world through. And if you just do that by yourself, you're perceiving through your normal lens the report, and it's just not possible to go quite as deep and get as robust an understanding of yourself and of the patterns that are present and that are showing up. So having the debrief is really important. Now, the reason I wanted to share this with you is because this isn't a super well-known assessment. And I think it's really helpful when you're considering investing in yourself that you have an understanding of what exactly you're getting. What does that look like? What is the value? How is this supportive? I called this episode What's Really Draining Your Energy because if you are someone who is feeling emotionally drained, tends to second guess yourself, feeling stuck in a cycle of over-responsibility and burnout. Maybe you identify as a recovering people pleaser. This episode is definitely going to resonate. Now, everybody's going to have a different experience with the ELI, different results from the ELI. I talk a little bit about that in this episode, but if you want to dive more into the framework, I have a couple other episodes, including the episode from earlier this month that I dig further into the framework so that you can take the framework and utilize it. I love this tool. I have had clients who love this. They've contacted me years later and told me how the framework itself has been so helpful in being able to create shifts in their life. Some of them have redone the ELI and seeing the things that have shifted over time and with different experiences and circumstances, what it looks like at a different point in their life. It's just fascinating. So if you are listening to this and you're like, I would really love to better understand my own patterns, especially how stress might be shaping your choices, I want you to know that I am currently offering a $150 discount on the Energy Leadership Index assessment. It's normally $345. And with the code April ELI, you'll receive the assessment, the report, a full 90-minute debrief with me to unpack your results, and a code for discounted coaching sessions if you want the additional support afterwards. I will make a note real quick here that this debrief is slightly shortened because normally 90 minutes. I wanted to try and keep this podcast a little bit more towards its normal length, though it is a little bit longer than usual. Anyway, I'm offering this discount right now because we're living through a time of rapid and often overwhelming change and just a lot of overwhelming dynamics. And this is a self-awareness tool that can be incredibly grounding. It can help you see where the stress is shaping your reactions and how you can shift into more intentional action regardless of the stressors. Basically shifting from what you don't have control over to what you do. The code is good through April 30th or until I reach capacity because it is an intensive offering. And so whichever comes first, that's how long it will last. And now, let's get into the example debrief so you can hear what this actually sounds like in practice. My goal with this assessment, when we go through it together, is that you understand how the patterns are showing up for you, but also that you understand the levels and how to engage them in a way that actually meets you where you're at with each level. Because we are not one level or the other level at any time. One may have dominance in our perception. So if you think of it like colors, whatever one is dominant is going to infuse all the other ones a little bit more, but that dominant color is also being infused by the other colors as well. Because I sent you the report ahead of time, so you had a chance to look it over a little bit. but not spend too much time overthinking it.
Right.
So we'll start with, what do you hope to achieve from this assessment?
Honestly, just a little bit more self-awareness as to like why I approach things or come to think of things in the way that I do. And not necessarily if it's good or bad, but what adjustments or changes or shifts can I make to be more in line with where I want to be, I suppose.
hmm If you had the knowledge to make shifts that would help you be more in alignment with where you want to be, what difference do you think that would make in your life?
I think it would reserve more energy for things that were more fulfilling and productive. You know what I mean? I think the negative self-talk or like the negative approach to things is more draining. Um, and that would be the only thing I can think of off the top of my head.
hmm Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, if you had more energy for the things that you wanted, what difference would that make, do you imagine, in your health and wellness?
Oh, huge. I think it would change everything, honestly, in like the way I parent, the way I show up in my relationships, even in my field, my business. I feel like when I've been physically more fit and like more active, I've had more energy, and therefore there's more waking hours in the day for me to do the things that I want to do versus there being hours in the day where I'm just waiting until we can go to sleep so I can rest.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yep. And when you are more tired, your body is also more reactive.
Right.
So it kind of feeds on itself. What difference do you think it would make in your sense of ability to be a leader or your leadership?
Well, no one wants a tired leader. But yeah, if I was not as tired as I feel and am, I think it would enable me to process and communicate more efficiently. So as ideas come, I'd probably be able to compute them and put them together and share them in a shorter time span than it takes now.
Mhm.
I feel like leaders are kind of like on top of it in that way. And consistent. I think consistency is kind of hard when your energy levels are fluctuating. And then, if you add the layer of hormones into it, it's just
Mhm.
it's a fun guessing game.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I ask about those things because part of the questionnaire involves certain things where you're feeling more satisfied or less satisfied in life. And so I kind of look at, what are we looking at really understanding? So that's part of where those questions come from. And then, so I'm hearing there may be some stories around being tired as well
Mm.
that play into, like you mentioned, the negative self-talk and that sort of thing. And so one thing about being tired, we have a lot of stories around productivity in our society. And so,
Absolutely.
especially when you have hormonal shifts or when you have energy dynamics, which can be mindset, but they can also be physical.
Mhm.
And those two will play together based on those stories. So that's something that I did notice and is pretty common with the energetic profile that I'm seeing for you. So it makes a lot of sense that that would be a big thing for you.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what did you notice when you looked at your report?
I think it was one of those like hope for the best situations. I was just like, oh, maybe I will get more of I think it was like 7 or 8 level. But I feel like it was more on the nose. I don't know. I was just like, yeah, this feels accurate. Like I have a level of self-awareness. I was just like, yeah, like you, you know. Um, so I don't I don't know if I had any specific expectations in taking the report. It was more of just like a FAFO, let's mess around and find out situation. Like where
Yeah.
the cards fall.
Was there anything that stood out to you when you looked at it?
I think I was surprised, like the dip in the middle, right? Like 1 and 2 was high, and then I think 7 or 8 was a little bit more, but the ones in the middle were pretty low, and I was just like, "Oh, I didn't expect there to be such contrast."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's one of the things I like to emphasize is, so there are two parts, since nobody's looking at your chart right now.
Right.
They're hearing us talk about it. There are two pieces to the chart. One is your energetic profile, and the other is your energetic stress reaction.
Mhm.
And so your energetic stress reaction is what happens when a stressor occurs. And it could be something that lasts a minute, a moment to days, depending on what that stressor is and how it's impacting you. So that is pretty much always going to be a level one or level two,
Okay.
or both, because that's that survival mode essentially. One and two exist in what's called the circle of self. And I'll have links to pictures in the show notes for everybody who's listening. One and two are those, I need to protect myself.
Mhm.
So one tends to be that like life's happening to me, and two is I'm going to stop you because you're doing this to me. So like life is happening to me and I'm powerless, to you're happening to me and that's no longer going to be the case. Like I need to win and you need to lose. It's an either or binary kind of situation. The blinders have gone on. There's no choice here. There's just right or wrong.
Right.
When we get into your energetic profile, those two can be present. And this is more how life is normally going for you. So it's like, this is your general color palette, or mix of colors, the colors that go into the lenses that you perceive. And then when stress happens, we squirt in a whole bunch of red and or gray, depending on which level shows up. So that's the dynamic. What I see in your chart, and so I'm going to touch on a little bit about like the general pattern that is common with this combination. And then we look at the different levels and how they may be showing up for you. I start with the what's called anabolic levels. So for everybody listening, a good precursor to this episode is the second episode of my podcast, which is about, you're more than your personality test. So this one, so we're talking about the catabolic levels, which is that stress response. So breaking down, limiting, reducing, constricting. So we usually in this debrief talk about your more anabolic levels, the ones where we're releasing the catabolic energy. We're starting to build, we're starting to expand. I emphasize that none of these levels are good or bad. They are all there for a reason, and they're showing up to support you the way that you know or have learned to support yourself.
Right.
So it's not necessarily good to be more level 7. Sometimes that can show a disassociation with reality, honestly.
Okay.
So, because level 7 is more like your meditative state, okay? More access to it can help you access the other levels more consciously, but we don't reside there as human beings in human bodies. So it's not a good or a bad thing. This isn't about who you are, it's how you're experiencing life right now and the lens that you're perceiving the world through. Okay. So, any questions at this point?
No, this is great. I think I pulled up my chart as
Okay.
reference because I was like, I don't know what I'm saying. Tired. Go figure. Um, I'm just really interested to see what you have to say about this.
Okay. So, the overarching pattern that I see within your profile, and just to explain, so your primary is level 4,
Mhm.
and then you have 3 levels that are all the same percentages.
Okay.
And you might be like, what does that mean? They're all the same. So, we give greater weight to the more catabolic energies. So and I hate to say lower energies because I think that gives a negative connotation, which
Right.
again plays into the catabolic stuff. But the more constricted energies are what we give more weight to because that tends to pull your focus.
Mm.
So when you have percentages that are all the same, we're going to look at the ones that are the lower levels. So we've got 1, 2, and 6 all have the same percentages. So I would say your secondary is level 1, your tertiary is level 2, and then your tertiary, I don't actually know the word for that, but it is level 6. What that shows me is that you have 3 top levels that are very emotional. Even numbers tend to be more emotional, and your odd numbers tend to be more logical. So when we think of, and I'm going to run through the levels just real quick for folks who are listening. Level 1 is I'm a victim, life's happening to me, I am powerless. Level 2 is I win, you lose. So for me to be okay, you have to lose. It's like your fight response.
Mhm.
Level 3 is when you start to come out of that circle of self into more of a circle of self-mastery. This is where you start to release the catabolic energy through rationalization. It's I win, but hopefully you do too. So it doesn't have to be an either or situation. You're like, I'm going to find a way to be okay. I do me, you do you. I can find the silver lining. I can make lemonade out of lemons. So that whole thing is level 3. And it involves a lot of that rationalization, brain power, figure it out,
Mhm.
tolerate it, all of that. Level 4 is you win. So I'm going to focus on caring for you. I'm going to give to you. I find with a lot of people I work with, people pleasers, stuff with fawn response can be a lot in level 4. So instead of just I'm being of service, it is I'm going to take care of you so that you take care of me.
Mhm.
And when that doesn't happen, level 1 or level 2 will activate. So this is I'm focused on you. You winning is my win. But again, this is where it can get murky. Level 5 is where we get to the win-win. We both win or we don't play. This is the level of opportunity. Everything is an opportunity, whether it's something I wanted or something I didn't want, it's all an opportunity. Again, this is like, if you think of accounting, this is like where you can make everything make sense. It all comes together. There's a lot of logic. I call it the scientist level. Level 6, we're heading into the circle of self-transcendence. And this is where we always win. Just playing the game, we win. So it's not either we both win or we don't play. It's by playing, we always win.
Right. And it's so funny that 1, 2, and 6. I got the same one because they all feel so opposite of each other.
So it's not necessarily that they're opposite. It's that they're interacting.
Mhm.
And so this is what I like to emphasize, even though I'm going to go through each level individually, so that you understand the level. Understanding how they interact shows you the pattern of how it's playing in your
Okay.
life. So that's what we're really looking for is the patterns. So what's the pattern that's working for you right now? And it may be a pattern that's working for you and may be like, you know what, actually that pattern, it's working, but it's not working, right? Like not always is it working the way you want it to be
Yeah.
working. But when you can understand how it's working, then you can go, well, this is where it's showing up. And this is what I want to try. Well, maybe what would it look like if I brought a little more level 5 in?
Mhm.
It's almost like going to the optometrist and be like, does this look clear or this one? This
Right.
one or this one? So you can kind of play with it and essentially use your imagination and your creativity to explore other options that might not have seemed as available to you because you didn't understand what your pattern was.
Mm.
Now I know my pattern. I know that this level is playing. What would it look like if this other level showed up? What would it look like if I brought it forward? And then you're using that imagination to explore it and go, well, if this level showed up, then this could happen. Well, what could I do to explore that in a way that would feel safe? So especially if level 1 is active,
Mhm.
it may be, what do I need to care for myself? Because my level 1 is active instead of this is true, this is what's real. Oh, I recognize this pattern. What supports me when I'm feeling this way?
Mhm.
right? So there, it takes some of the judgment out, I have noticed.
Yeah.
So to look at that for you, we are seeing the 4 and 1 playing together, which again, that tends to show me that you care very deeply about people and that you may take on things as your responsibility that aren't actually your responsibility. And so it creates a sense of powerlessness because you want to help, you want to be there for people. There's a deep importance. And then there's also a viewpoint that something is broken or someone is broken and that something is wrong. And if you can't do something about it, especially if it's not yours to do something about, it creates this sense of powerlessness that can feel kind of like a vortex.
Okay.
The amount of level 2 suggests that part of how you may be pulling yourself out of that vortex is by blaming the other person or the situation and using your anger
Mhm.
to keep yourself going.
Right.
Because that level 2 is like a burst of energy. You can motivate yourself with level 2. It has a lot of power to get ish done.
Yeah. I've yes. I've definitely used anger to start a lot of things, and then I haven't been able to sustain it, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, nothing can sustain on anger, and so things will fall out, fizzle out, and then I'm back to 1 where I'm just like, "Oh, I'm not good at anything, nothing works out, da, 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 da,"
Mhm.
right? And then 1, I get angry enough, and then I'll start over.
Yeah. And tell me if this is accurate, but part of where your anger may come from is either for someone else's situation or in order to like help somebody. Like there's an injustice. There's something that isn't happening. And so that's what fuels your anger to do
Oh
something.
my god, yes. Yes.
Okay.
It's like, someone else is insulted and I'm more angry than the person who got insulted,
Mhm.
and I'm getting better at being like, "If they're not bothered, why are you?" Like, you know, but it's hard.
Yeah. So that is common with those level dynamics
Okay.
because what you're used to right now is motivating yourself through that fight response.
Mhm.
And rather than rejuvenating yourself, you use that fight response for someone else, that level 4, I'm caring for you,
Right.
to burst energy, but that energy can't sustain. And so then you're tired, but then you have a story about why you're tired and what's wrong with you that you're tired.
Yep.
Okay. So that makes sense with this patterning. With 6 being your next, basically what I see, what's common with the 4-6 is that your energy is being held back by the more catabolic energies.
Okay.
Okay. So 4-6 is actually not, I mean, it's not common, but it it basically says that you really want to be resonating more in that heart connective space,
Yeah.
but those other energy levels are pulling you down so that it's really hard to be in that space.
Yes, I feel this.
Okay.
What do I do about it?
So we're gonna take a look a little bit about like exactly how that's playing so that you have a better understanding. And the goal of this assessment is that you can see the patterns
Okay.
so that you can then use the tool of the levels to explore, okay, how do I show up differently? And then, of course, this is what I use when I work with people, when I'm coaching with people. We hold that space and this awareness so that I'm essentially coaching the energy versus telling you what to
Yeah.
do. It's helping you utilize that tool and also holding space for, okay, I recognize that this is that pattern. What could we do to expand level 3? Level 3 is kind of how we pull out of, like, we release the catabolic energy.
Mhm.
So essentially, kind of like what you just described, actually. They're not this angry. Why are
Right.
you? And so taking it further to what would help you release that anger.
Mhm.
It's really easy when we're used to, or really common when we're used to using that anger to motivate.
Right.
You don't necessarily want to release the anger. right? I need this anger. This is
Right.
helpful. What will I do if I don't have
Mhm.
it? And so finding where you can harness energy differently. And this may point to that too, because that level 6 is part of where you get energy. So I'm going to just go through real quick because this is a kind of an abbreviated version. So I'm going to go through each level real quick for
Okay.
you, and I'll ask a few questions within it. So if we go to level 3, which is lower for you, level 3, what I see here is that you try to choose how you react to situations. You look for the good aspects of a person or situation. You strive to accept other people as they are without trying to change them. And one of the things I pick up with this is that you found it to be a slippery slope, because when you are striving to accept other people without trying to change them, sometimes that means letting them get away with unacceptable behavior
Right.
that you then beat yourself up for
Yeah.
allowing.
Yeah.
Okay. So what this emphasizes to me is that boundary work may be helpful,
Okay.
because with level 4, there's a lot of compassion for
Mhm.
people. You've learned to block people who would take advantage of that with anger. And that helps you hold a boundary. So working on boundary work such that you don't have to use that level of energy to hold the boundary, that there's more ability to allow people to either win or not win, and that's okay, without feeling responsible for them winning or losing or in their feelings.
Okay.
How does that hit for you?
It resonates. I feel like that applies heavily. A lot of my anger and boundaries is around family, right? And so it's just like, well, if they're not going to fight for themselves, why am I going to hold on to it? And then also, I don't know, it's like one of those things of like, do I confront this person and have an unproductive conversation where I know I'm going to be stressed out and just frustrated afterwards? Or do I just set the boundary and like walk away and it is what it is? So I feel
Yeah.
that, yeah, I think the boundaries are through anger and they are draining, because it's like I have to not say anything. Well, not have to. I choose to not say anything um for it to be less of a drain.
Yes. Yeah. So boundaries and loving detachment
Mhm.
are the two things that come to mind with this, is that it's the ability to tap into some of the level 5 and
Mhm.
6, which is trusting that everything works out the way it needs to, kind of the bless and
Right.
release, emphasis on the bless. How do I bless them? Whatever that means for
Right.
you, to trust that the universe will care for them the way they need, and that you are there when they are ready to hear something different,
Yeah.
so that you retain that energy. But that's that level. A lot of that is level 3 of, this is bad.
Mhm.
What they're doing is bad. What they're doing is wrong. What they're doing is hurting them. What they're doing, whatever story you are telling about what they're doing, to be able to say, and that is theirs.
Right. Yeah.
And I can love them without trying to manage that for them, which is hard. So that's where the work is that switch up. We haven't gone to those levels yet. So, but that's level 3, is that, like, ultimately I have to take care of me.
Mhm.
I wish you well. I hope the best for
Yeah.
you. Right now, you're using level 2 because it feels like an attack, because of how deeply you care about
Right.
people. Okay. So, level 4, what I see for you here, and this is your primary, you feel great when you can help someone overcome a problem, and people tend to come to you with their problems. When they do, you are more concerned with how you can help them than what they can do for you. It may feel safer to give than to receive. It may also feel more accessible to give than to receive, because I'm getting the impression, correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of the people that come to you, you don't actually think have the capacity to give to you.
Correct.
Okay. So that, and then you care deeply and feel the need to fix problems that you
Yeah.
see. I'm curious, when do you feel frustrated if you can't help some? Or you know what? Let me rephrase that. When do you not feel frustrated when you can't help someone?
Oh. Um, when they seem to have a plan or something of their own figured out. Like, I know they're not just still hanging on, you know?
Mhm. And I would imagine that's when they have a plan that you trust, that makes sense to you?
Yes, I would say on my more unhealed days when my ego is not, driving the car, it's like, okay, they have a plan, like, they're good. They're not in crisis mode anymore. They're not panicking, like, it's fine. That feels good. On days where my ego is in the driver's seat, the plan has to make sense to me. Uh,
Mhm.
for it to be like, "Okay, yes, this is actually gonna solve the problem. They're not gonna be coming back to me for the same shit in a couple of weeks."
And I would highlight with that, especially just that terminology, the ego. So that sense of self, the circle of self is where we think of the
Okay.
ego being, okay? But this is a threatened ego. This is a an ego that feels in danger. So what that often indicates is that there is some danger that you experience by them not being well
Mm,
or having what they need. Like it somehow feels threatening to you.
I think because it's exhausting, right? Like, when you have that person that's constantly in need, and it seems to me as if they're not helping themselves, it becomes because like, you want to be there for them, but they're in their cycle or their spiral, and, you can only spiral with someone for so long.
How much are they asking you for help when that's the case?
Um I think that is usually the ask of, like, energy and time, if someone just, like, they want to vent or rant, and they don't necessarily want a solution or to brainstorm problem solving, which
Mhm.
sounds terrible, but it's also I can't I don't have an hour all the time to sit here and be like, "Yeah, like, that sucks. Like, yeah, that's terrible." It's like, "Okay, well, what are we gonna do about this? Like, how can we turn this around and move on or move forward
Mhm.
or whatever?" Um, yeah. Or maybe sound like a
Yeah.
terrible person.
No, no, because it is about having those boundaries and being clear on what your energetic capacity
Right.
is. Because if you have a reduced energetic capacity and you have someone who needs that kind of space, this is that slippery slope for level
Mhm.
4 is that oftentimes when the focus is on caring for other people, you're not necessarily clear on what your capacity is. And so you will go over your capacity
Right.
without realizing it. And then you're running on empty. And then naturally you're in self preservation mode, which is 1 and 2.
Okay.
And so that helps protect you from. I'm now at 0. My gas tank is
Right.
empty. I have poured all the everything out and just like being hungry or tired or whatever, like when our bodies are depleted, we are much more vigilant towards potential danger
Mhm.
because we are much more vulnerable when we are in that kind of
Yeah.
state. So it makes sense to be in a protective space where you would have your ego get in the driver's seat, as it were,
Mhm.
because that's what you need to protect yourself when you've reached capacity. So having an awareness of your capacity so you can allocate space for the things that are important to you. So if it is important to you that you're giving space, now then again, it can also be when somebody's coming to you and they're constantly complaining about things and not actually doing
Mhm.
anything. This is where a boundary comes in. I care about you. I've listened and I'm willing to support you doing a thing, I can't continue to listen to the same thing over and over
Right.
again. But I'm here when you're ready to do something
Yeah.
different. Right. That takes a lot of, again, that's more of that level 3 or even level 5. You can say, I'm not going to enable you to keep
Yeah.
spinning. That's level 5. Like, I need to take care of me. And by removing myself from this spinning that you're doing, I'm not going to
Hmm.
participate. So hopefully you will realize that you need to do something about it. Right. So that can be a level 5 approach versus a level 3 approach where it's like, I just need to like,
Yeah.
right. So that would be the difference. And this is where bringing those levels in instead of the level right now, you're using level 2 to fend them
Yeah.
off because you will 4 until you're depleted and then 2 has to take
Yeah.
over. Does that make
Sounds right.
sense? Okay. Yeah. So, okay. Level 5, which is you believe that there is a real purpose to life and that everything has a place and is here for a reason. You make the most out of every opportunity presented, whether it is positive or negative. What I'm curious about at this level, what does it mean to you for everything to work out for the best?
It's kind of like that sentiment of like, what's meant for you will come to you. Um, I don't know if honestly, it's probably just something I tell myself to get on to the next thing. You hear it enough and you're just like, okay, yeah, I really wanted XYZ to work out and it didn't, but maybe that's for the best. Like it has to be for the best because to think anything else would just it doesn't help anything, right? It would just drain your
Mhm.
energy versus like, okay, you're like, okay, if that wasn't meant for me, like move on to the next thing. And you just kind of keep going, moving forward versus the spiral.
What would it look like for you to apply
Hmm.
that? Because it sounds like when you're applying that, you're applying it to something that's happening to
Right.
you, a situation that you're navigating. What would it look like to apply that to these people?
I don't know because when you're going through something and you're complaining to someone, if they're just like, "Oh, everything happens for the best," you'd want to punch them in the face. Like I feel like I would want to punch someone.
So it's not saying that to them.
Yeah.
Yes. That's true. And that, I mean, there's a lot of stuff there. There's like the toxic
Right.
positivity and all of that sort of thing. Um, I mean, that's like a whole podcast episode. I think I might even have some on that. But for you, in terms of being able to protect your energetic capacity, if you were able to trust that whatever needs to
Mhm.
happen for them is going to happen,
Right.
like basically apply what you just applied for yourself to them, not necessarily saying it to them, but energetically for you. What would that look like?
I think that'd be very helpful. I think sometimes I will try to like have them come to that realization on their own by asking them certain questions, right? Just being like, well, like, what were you excited about? What were you worried about when it came to this thing? Or like, oh, it seemed like this is not something that you really wanted. It's like, you know, don't be so upset about it without saying that, of course. I'm just like, oh, well, now you have more time to do this other thing that they may have mentioned, right? It's just a different level of mental gymnastics, really. Oh.
Hmm. So what I heard you do there was you want them to do it first.
Right. So I'm not the one who's like, oh, maybe it's for the best.
Yeah. Well, no, but I don't even mean that. Like, we're not even talking about saying it to
Mhm.
them. You want them to come to the realization so you can let go of the
Yes.
responsibility. If they don't come to it first, you feel a responsibility to continue holding them.
Yes.
Okay. So the invitation here is with your thing, you are able to put it down.
Mhm.
What would it take for you to put them down?
I don't know. Like, they're your friends or your family, like, aren't you supposed to, like, carry them until they can stand?
Not if carrying them is keeping them from learning what they need to learn and depleting you and your ability to carry your things and other people who are looking for
Mhm.
the support you have to offer.
I don't do you have the answer? I don't know.
So some of it may be practice. And this is again where the invitation is to notice when it's
Right.
happening. And in that moment, because it's hard to do when you're not in the moment, but in that moment, think of this conversation and think, what would it look like if I trusted that regardless of whether they can see it right
Right.
now, the universe will carry them. I don't have
I
to.
love it. Oh, what would Valerie do? Got it. I'm just kidding. No, it's
I've had clients say they need a wristband that says that, and I'm like, that's on you. You can make that one. I'm not putting that
that's
one.
hilarious. No, but I do like that POV or that permission, right? Of just being like, "Okay, like, they'll be fine." And also, it's not all on me. It's not like I'm not the only person in the world that they're talking to, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes I'm
Yes.
just like, "Calm down, dude." Like
Yeah. Well, it is again that, and you've even said you're willing to help when there is something to
Yeah.
do, when they're actually willing to take action to change the
Mhm.
circumstances. What you're running out of capacity for is listening to them spin,
Right.
listening to them level
Yeah.
one. So to be able to say, you will spin just fine without me
Do you,
also
boo?
spinning with
Yeah.
you. I don't need to join you in this.
Yeah.
Um, so it's an exploration. So it's not even necessarily to say to do something different. It's just to take a moment to, when you're in it, to reflect on what that might look like and see what comes forward. So that's something that can happen in coaching, is that we'll look at that and we'll set an
Yeah.
experiment essentially to see, well, what would it look like to try this and see what happens? Because oftentimes this sort of thing is rooted in a sense of
Mhm.
safety. When you were younger, at some point, you felt like you were responsible for somebody else's feelings, someone who would care for you. So if you couldn't care for them, then they wouldn't be able to care for you, or you wouldn't be carefulable,
Yeah.
and that feels unsafe. So it has to do often with a sense, like a deep sense of unsafety. If I don't continue caring for this person in this way, if I put them down, they'll leave me.
Right.
They'll, some sort of story about what will happen, and it can feel a real sense of danger, which is where your survival mode kicks in, level 1, level 2, to protect you from that danger.
This is awesome. I think just the awareness alone, it's a huge shift because, like, you're tired and you're annoyed at things, but to be like, "Okay, what specifically is draining you, and what can you do in that
Mhm.
moment?"
Yeah. And even just noticing it sometimes can take its power
Exactly.
to be like, "Oh, this is that
Right.
pattern." So, we'll move to level 6. Level 6, you feel a connection to everyone and everything and experience a synergy working with others that is highly motivating and sparks your creative and intuitive ability to make things happen. You are living a powerful, purposeful life, and those closest to you are part of you and help create and shape who you are.
Bomb.
Where does that show up for you? When do you feel that?
Um, when I'm I feel like it's gonna sound so absurd. Honestly, like, in my DMs and in these communities that I'm in, because when I'm sharing my work and people are responding to it or we're talking to it, it sparks conversation, engagement, and connection. It feels very aligned and very fulfilling. Talking to my husband about the things that I'm working on, like his excitement around it or like just his support is very fulfilling.
Mhm. Okay. So I'm in the interest of time, given this is podcast length. It's the reason I usually do these
sessions is 90 minutes because I love to just like really dig in. So we can always talk more afterwards. But I'm going to touch on level 7. We're not going to explore it very much because, again, this is one that we like tap into, but we don't really stay there.
Yeah.
With level 7, this resonates for you you are obviously passionate about what you do. You're a creator and a visionary filled with a sense of love and appreciation for your place in life. You create your life in each moment. We often hit on these in moments, often in a creative moment, but it could be, the stop and smell the flowers in that space where you're just like in awe of the world and creation.
Right.
So it's not necessarily a space that we stay in all the time. So based on all of this, the pattern that I see that is serving you, that's working for you, is that you're connected to a creative flow and an intuitive sense of what you want to create. Others come to you, and whether they are joyful or struggling, working together, you experience a synergy that enhances the creative experience. You feel a sense of purposefulness in the process, but particularly so when you learn that the experience you were part of helped someone overcome a struggle they were having.
Yes, absolutely.
So that is where I see is really where you're shining right now. Well, it's working well for you is when you tap into that.
Yeah.
Okay, so shall we? I know we've hit a little bit on the places that are stuck because they all play together, right? Like they're all there.
Right.
I honed into a few places where that catabolic energy is really standing out. So I will go over those patterns and then we'll take a look at that. So what I see for you is that you feel a heavy sense of responsibility and feel very disappointed when things don't go your way, especially when it comes to helping others. There may be some guilt or fear of letting people down and some stories around what it means about you if you let people down, which creates a pressure to be right so you don't let people down.
Right.
You may replay events over and over, wishing you'd acted differently. Essentially acts as a way to punish yourself, which naturally leads you to avoid making decisions when you're uncertain for fear of the pain of being wrong or disappointed that you do to yourself. And it's kind of like, again, like I said, a way of punishing yourself for not getting it right or disappointing somebody. You maintain high expectations and hold on to hurts to try and protect yourself from people taking advantage of you. You may feel guilty for having boundaries. When you get hurt, you beat yourself up for not protecting yourself better or for not working hard enough when you don't get what you want. What stands out to you about that?
All of it. Hi, it's me.
Yeah.
I don't know why you have to read me like that, Valerie.
So this is not just you. It's common with the dynamics that are in your chart. The cool thing about this is it's not who you are. Is one of the reasons I love this assessment is it's not saying this is your personality. This is the way you are, who you are. This is the way your lens is functioning right now that gets you caught. So these are the patterns. Patterns can be changed. When we
Yeah.
understand the pattern, we can notice where it's showing up, when it's showing up, and recognize that it is not you. It's not who you are. It is a pattern that you learned that served you for some reason. And again, a lot of this is self-protection. So the heavy sense of responsibility often comes from a need to protect yourself. So to be right, we learn the tool of shame to keep ourselves in order because that's what was used on us as kids to keep us in order. So whatever that order is. So we shame ourselves to prevent ourselves from making the same mistake again without really understanding why we did the thing that may not have actually been a mistake. It may have been a thing that was done for a reason that just didn't work the way we were conditioned to think it would.
Yeah.
So maintaining those high expectations, again, that's a way of utilizing your fight response to protect yourself from the energy depletion that happens when you feel that weight of responsibility. So both helps you hold the weight of
Mhm.
responsibility, beat yourself up when you so-called drop that responsibility, or keeps you able, that cortisol, adrenaline, if you're holding up a car, you need that fight energy. You need that adrenaline and cortisol to keep the person from under it from getting squashed. And
Right.
it helps you continue to hold it because it feels like it's your responsibility to hold it, except the other person isn't crawling out from under the car.
Yeah.
So there's a utility to there. So then it can be, well, how true is it that they're going to get squished if I put this car down?
Mhm.
What resources do I need to be able to put the car down? Maybe it's finding blocks that go, hey, can you send some blocks over? We'll put the car on some blocks and then I can put it down. So
Yeah.
it's understanding what the pattern is and then finding a way to support yourself as you shift it. So what do you think about giving this pattern a name?
Oh.
So if we said, this pattern is, you feel a heavy sense of responsibility, feel guilty about being tired and not wanting to carry that responsibility, fear of letting people down,
Mhm.
and what it means about you if you let people down. When you do, replaying events over and over, wishing you'd acted differently to punish yourself, to push yourself to not do that again. So you keep holding that weight of responsibility and maintaining high expectations and holding on to hurt to prevent other people from also having you hold them up. But then you feel guilty for saying no to that and beat yourself up for not doing better and being able to hold up all the cars.
I'm tired just listening to you describe this person.
So what do you want to call that?
I would call that Debbie.
Sorry to any Debbie listening.
Debbie Downer. I feel like it's a downer, right?
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So this is Debbie. We name the pattern so that we separate it from yourself. Kind of like when we
Yeah.
talk about inner critics, we give the inner critic a separate identity. We recognize that the inner critic is there to protect us. This Debbie Downer is there to help you, but she's not really doing a very good job. When you can notice when Debbie has shown up, you can look at where is the help that you are needing. What is she there to do?
Right.
And is that really what you want her to be doing?
Right. Put down the card, Debbie.
Yeah. And so then it's taking some of those other levels and exploring them a little bit, including, all right, let's explore level 3. Sometimes we can't get to level 5, but sometimes level 5 feels more accessible. It's really what makes the most sense for you. If you can tap into this universal energy. And I get the sense, a lot of people, I would tend to go to level 3 of like, all right, how do we release the catabolic energy? That may be that rationalization, and you may use that sometimes. I do wonder if you might find it easier since you use level 5 for yourself, it sounds like.
Right.
That trust in the universe, that connectedness that you feel, because level 6 is so strong for you.
Right.
And it's right between 4 and 6,
Yeah.
right? So I wonder if that would be more accessible
I think
for
so,
you.
just because I've been reading a lot about spirituality and just kind of like getting into that mindfulness and being present and releasing control type vibes, Debbie
Mhm.
vibes. So yeah.
Okay. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how interested are you in releasing Debbie from her job?
Uh,
Finding a Debbie replacement. 1 being not interested, 10 being like 100% totally
yeah, for
interested.
probably like an 8, 8.8.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
What makes it not a 7?
Cause like I don't like her enough to keep her at 7.
Gotcha. What makes it not a 9?
It's a safety.
Mhm.
It's like you were saying, right? Like this is something that she's here to help keep me safe. So it's like, okay, well,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's important to look at so that you can explore, is there another way to feel safe
Yeah.
right? Because that's where the gap is between letting Debbie go, is finding those ways of what will help you feel safe.
Right.
And maybe it's a different way of thinking about it, and maybe it's a strategic thing. It just depends on the situation. But only once you are noticing where she's showing up will you be able to notice, okay, this is what I want to try to see if I can cultivate a sense of safety here. And or even I'm going to try this and see what happens, because this risk seems rather low to put that one down.
I love this because it touches on so many things, right? Like I've identified that the people pleaser in me is a response to like a worthiness wound, and my need to like solve people's problems and go above and beyond is because I feel like they won't care about me or won't be friends with me if I'm not giving them something or not providing value to them. And so being able to be like, yeah, that sucks, and not do anything for them and step away and still have a connection or friendship or whatever it may be. Like that's the fear, right? Like that's the like, oh, like if I'm not doing, then what are they getting? Then why will they like what will keep them coming around? You know? So
Yeah.
yeah. I was not expecting all of this insight on this Monday, but this is great.
Happy Monday. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, so that is the debrief. And then what I will generally do with folks is send them the recording for them to download. I don't do anything with it, except this time I will, because we agreed on that. Sometimes people just do this as a standalone. Sometimes they say they want to keep working. Sometimes they get it as part of a package. And then we go from there with coaching around it to actually work on those specific things where this is showing up and whatever their goals were for coaching.
Amazing.
That's what it looks like. Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to support you with this one.
Yo, this was great.
I hope this conversation gave you a deeper sense of what's possible when we understand our own energy patterns. If you're feeling curious about your own results, don't forget I'm offering $150 off the Energy Leadership Index Assessment and Debrief through April 30th or until I reach capacity, whichever comes first. The assessment is normally $345 and includes a 90-minute consult with me plus a follow-up discount if you'd like continued coaching support. In a follow-up a few months after the debrief you just heard, this client shared she feels more steady in her path and has more patience. The stressors in her life haven't gone away, but they don't knock her off course the way they used to. These are challenging times, and I believe tools like this can help us show up more clearly, calmly, and in alignment with who we really want to be and what we want to create in the world. You can use the code AprilELI to book, and the link is in the show notes. As always, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, any comments, thoughts, things you'd like to explore further. I'd love to hear from you. You can send me an email. There is a link in the show notes to send me a text, or you can also put a note on the episode. I love to hear from you, and I will talk to you all next time.